This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Churches sharing resources in underserved areas. Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers. It's a regular Wednesday feature during the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues that matter to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Welcome back, Chris.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be back.
Our topic today is one I have no doubt pastors in smaller and more rural churches can really relate to: the sharing of resources in underserved areas. I guess we should start by defining that term a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think we have a few churches in this area of our listening area that meet the criteria. And I would say, really, Mark, when we're talking about resources, of course, we're not necessarily just talking about buildings or picnic pavilions or whatever. I'm talking about people, really, ministry programs, and like in any real care industry, and it can be the healthcare industry, or it can be social care industries or whatever. In areas like we have in Western New York, Central New York, all the way down into Pennsylvania, we've got rural areas that just have a hard time meeting the needs spiritually of folks in rural areas that don't have a lot of population. So this is a really timely topic for a number of reasons, and it's really good that we're talking about it here, especially maybe in light of Thanksgiving week here, and when everybody's thinking about giving and serving.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It's about sharing burdens. Too often in smaller church settings, pastors are expected to do it all, right down to cleaning the bathrooms, and congregants too, especially younger ones with young families. They get so stretched thin with their own schedules, it gets hard for them to pitch in much, and things get rather complicated when it comes to divvying up the ministry and serving everyone's needs.
Absolutely, and of course we know there's that 80-20 principle we're all used to a lot of times in churches, where 80% of the workload is done by 20% of the folks in the church, and so that's something that churches, even in larger city areas, run up against. But the problem is when you do have needs, and again, a well-functioning church is going to have a very solid men's ministry, and then also a women's ministry, a children's ministry, ministries at different levels. But when you don't have the population that can attend, or you don't have folks, or you don't have churches that have the resources to provide this, I guess the question is then, what do you do? And of course, sharing resources, or even encouraging. Now, I might be ruffling some feathers out there, particularly of some folks that do believe like, hey, this is our church, your church home is here, you got to stay in one spot. Boy, I have to just be honest with you. I think that is a very unhealthy mindset.
Yeah, almost an outdated business model, you might say.
Exactly. And if we're not careful, then, of course, what's really happening then is our churches just end up in a competition with one another, as opposed to looking at ways of saying, hey, we are all the body of Christ. How can we best serve an area that traditionally suffers from a lack of resources and a lack of effective outreaches? And so I think we have to remove some of those old-fashioned blinders, if you will, and just say, hey, look, we've got a group of folks here that they're not getting met necessarily here. How can we then partner with another church?
Oh, that's a good point. You're listening to Real Answers. I'm Mark Webster, along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. We're talking about sharing resources in underserved areas. And a corollary to that topic is having your own congregation share its resources to help lighten the burden. That's actually been a point of emphasis in my own church recently. We did a congregation-wide survey of everybody's talents so that we'd be better equipped to share, because having people ready to step up really makes a world of difference, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's just what you're doing, is you're just doing a human resources inventory, if you will, looking at the skills and looking at the gifts and abilities that you have within your particular church. And then just say, okay, here's something that we can do with what we have that perhaps another church wouldn't be able to do. And again, it's just being able to get away from the fear that, well, we don't want to send our people to a different church because then maybe they might leave and go to that church. You know what? But quite honestly, if the Lord's going to lead somebody to go to a different church, that's between the Lord and that church congregant. And of course, pastors and church leaders would do well to try to talk to that person and find out if there are other extraneous circumstances that are causing them to want to leave. But if not, and it's just that we don't feel like our needs are being met, then give them your blessing and let them go. But the reality is, Mark, we're at a time where connection is vital. We're becoming consumed by this artificial intelligence and this lack of connection because we just cannot seem to control the digital flow of our society into technology that, my goodness, I get so many folks in my practice that they just say, I can't connect. And it's not necessarily just churches either. They're disconnected, they're isolated, they're depressed, they're anxious. So this is something, we got to look at this from a bigger picture perspective, not be so concerned about, well, what if our people leave our church? Okay, I'm not saying that isn't valid, but at the same time, we got to really look at, okay, what's in the best interest of our rural communities and the best interest of the church as a whole, and what can we do to encourage cooperation?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. And you could argue that some of this issue really goes back to COVID even. A lot of churches started going online during the pandemic. Some people just stayed that way afterwards. And if you're attending mostly electronically, I'm not necessarily saying that's a terrible thing, but it's hard to really be involved in the life of the church that way.
It's not necessarily a terrible thing as long as it has its proper place. And connection, I do in my practice, I do offer telehealth counseling services. I've got clients in New York City. I've got clients up near the Albany area. And while I think that does serve a place, personal connection, when you're with other people, sharing meals together, game nights, doing things, outdoor activities together, that right there is where the real community happens. That's where real connection takes place. And, honestly, this cyber connection we've got that's just taken over our lives is never going to be the same.
Absolutely. You've been listening to Real Answers, a Wednesday feature of the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues important to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Thanks again, Chris.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.